How does it look outside?
It's drizzling.
It's drizzling.
Yeah. Do some chorus.
Sure.
That's just the one I really want to get to. Let's see what I have.
Leni
Riefenstahl?
Riefenstahl, yeah.
Yeah.
You had a very negative reaction to it. Why?
Because it was patently, she was patently false. I mean, it didn't matter, but no 98-year-old woman looks like that without a great deal of assistance. So she was beautiful, of course, in a very conventional kind of way, but I would want her to look more beautiful as a 98-year-old woman. The way Elsa does as an 89-year-old woman, Elsa Brody.
How is it different?
Well, Elsa Brody doesn't have a speck of makeup on. And the only artificial thing about her at all is that she has her hair done at a beauty parlor, and I think they curl it a little bit. But I don't think she has a permanent.
But you wanted to have lipstick on before I took a picture of you.
I have always had to have lipstick on. I can't leave the house without lipstick. I mean, just as it's sort of unnatural to leave the house without earrings, it's unnatural for me to, and I will tell you why. Once, about 30 years ago, 25 years ago, I walked into my office having forgotten to put on lipstick. And one of my associates, John, they were both named John, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. John, the newer one, said, "Are you sick or something?" That was the last time I went out of the house without lipstick. So now you understand.
You had a facelift?
Yes.
I guess I knew that. I had forgotten it entirely.
I don't know how many people I told.
Yeah.
I had one of my staff members was a sort of a shill for a I realized later for a what do you call it?
Plastic surgeon?
Plastic surgeon in Long Island. And she persuaded me that would be a good thing for me to do. And it was only a couple of years after Dad's death, and I was easily persuaded for anything, really. So, at any rate, I did it. And he didn't do a very good job, actually, because he left scars in the back of my neck, which I think are still visible. But I think he did a pretty good job for then. You can't tell. Then I think I was warned that once the effects of that were over, my face would fall, and it probably has.
But how did you react to the facelift at the time? To the results of it?
Well, nobody seemed to notice.
Really?
I probably had looked pretty good before. People don't notice. They say, "Oh, have you just had a vacation, or have you been sitting in the sun, or something like that?" They don't.
Well, that's what you want, isn't it? You don't
Yeah.
want everybody to say, "Oh, did you just have a facelift?"
No, of course not. You don't want to say that.
How old were you then?
How old was I then? I must have been about 62. No. I was 58 when Dad died. He was 58. So I must have been 59, maybe 60.
Was that that was a youthfulness thing you were feeling like? Did you feel like you aged more rapidly after he died?
No, I didn't think that at all, actually.
Had you ever thought of this facelift business while he was alive?
No, I never would have thought of it myself, if this very good-looking young lady staff member, and she was one of my testers, psychological testers, from Glen Cove, I believe. No, I would never have thought of it.
Why do you think she got the idea, aside from her being a shill?
Maybe she thought it would cheer me up.
Did it?
No, I mean, it distracted me a while. There was pain afterwards, and then I had to stay around the house a bit more, for a bit. And I think that my housekeeper at the time drove me. It might have been Lee. Which reminds me, I should be saying, every once in a while I send a check to Lee. Happy Valentine's Day, Happy St. Patrick's Day, Happy 4th of July, Happy Mother's Day. And I didn't. And she, unconsciously, I'm sure, calls me when a check is overdue. Just thought of me, and she'd like to say hello and how am I, and how much she misses me, and how she loves me, and how is Susie, and how are Danny. And that reminds me, and I was going to send off a check to her before I left. So she's having a birthday in October, so I'll send her a pre-birthday.
How old is she?
94 or 95 on her birthday. She now depends a lot on her friends and church people to visit her. They visit her every day. They usually bring her dinner. And she works in the garden. She said she did last time I talked to her. She was doing some gardening, planting.
You were saying, you mentioned her because you said that she was the one who drove you to the plastic surgeons or something.
Well, yes, she drove. I gave her remember when I got a new car, I think it was when I leased when I bought the Toyota, leased the Toyota. I think I gave her my old Chevy, and that lasted for another 10 years. It must have been, I don't know, 20 or 30 years old when it finally fell apart, and she didn't have anything to drive. Well, that coincided, I think, with the time that she shouldn't be driving at all. But Elsa, I referred her to Elsa. Elsa was doing volunteer tutoring, literacy tutoring. And so I reminded Elsa the other day, she said, oh yes, we used to read Shakespeare together and Songs of Innocence. Who's that? Blake together, and a couple of people like that. And she had a wonderful time reading them. I'm sure she couldn't read them, but she somehow convinced Elsa that she was reading them. What she really reads, is Charlotte's Web. I found out that she was reading my copy of it down in the basement when she went down there to wash clothes or something. And she really knew it. She knew it was about a farm and about a spider and so on. So I bought her a copy, and now she has a copy of her own. But that's the only book aside from the Bible that I think she has ever read. Okay, now you see that it's
By the
red.
way, I don't know how loud to talk here.
Well,
Actually, you talk a little loud. You were talking, I think, more loudly than you normally do.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, then you talk a little bit more loudly.
Of course, I always have to talk a little louder for you.
Anyway, yes, that's right.
Anyway, you
Now-
don't have to watch it. You can just abandon that. And
I can abandon
sit
it.
that or
I'm
sit
going
down
to
or-
sit down.
You're just trying to avoid smashing the thing to the floor.
I'm trying to avoid that.
Now, I give you 5 minutes of interview. What do you want to ask me?
I want to ask you, what is the latest book you have been reading lately?
Oh, I hardly read any books. Oh no, I read Morton Feldman's book, a collection of Morty Feldman's essays, just called "Give My Regards to 8th Street."
Morty Feldman is a composer?
Yeah,
And what does he compose?
he died 15 years ago. He was a friend of Cage's, but
Of John Cage?
Yeah, and like Cage, he used chance operations to do his to make his music to some extent. But he always made music at the edge of audibility, always pianissimo.
At the edge of audibility.
Right, very,
so it scares
very
the ear.
gentle and I mean, this is what stands out for somebody who doesn't know his music, who doesn't know anything about it, is that it's very soft, gentle, and it lasts a long time. I mean, I once only saw a proper performance of it, and it was,
That's interesting.
3 hours, 4 hours of music.
Interesting.
But he's in New York. He's a Brooklyn guy. Anyway, yeah. So that's the book I most recently read. Or one
And
book.
he's a writer. Was he good? These are essays, or
Yeah, he did a lot of music criticism, things like that. Wrote a lot about complained a lot about other composers.
Complains
Wrote a lot
about-
of vitriol about other composers.
Vitriol.
Anyway, what you really want to? You
Yeah,
really want
really
literary criticism from me?
yes,
That's what you want to record?
yes,
Okay.
of course.
All right. What else do you want to? What else do you want to know?
Well, what, for instance, were they all other modern composers like him?
You want to know what Morty
Yeah.
Feldman wrote in his
Yes,
book?
I do.
Why?
Because I'm curious about someone who writes the kind of music that to me is, I'm afraid, non-music, as you describe it.
I think you might actually like his music. There's all sorts of very complicated theories around it, and he has a lot of things to say about it, but the music itself ends up being very gentle and very pleasant. And I love it, and people usually, and you get into it, if you sit and listen to it for a long period of time, you get completely into this little world of small sounds.
Do you think that you have to be a musician to like his music and
No,
respond to
what
it?
I'm just saying is that this is very accessible music. It's more accessible than most Cage, for example, which sounds strange or
Indeed.
dissonant.
How about compared to Alvin's?
Alvin's done very different kinds of music.
You can't.
He doesn't use natural. Feldman uses instruments,
Yes.
making tones, doing the kinds of tones that the instruments were made to make exclusively. He doesn't use recorded natural sounds like Alvin does, for example.
Well, before I get into my peeves about modern music and so on, or ignorances, did you read, let me ask you another book about your reading. Did you read anything else? You must, you're always reading.
You want to interview me about my reading? Okay.
Yes.
I can't imagine why you want to interview me about my reading. But
Okay,
I guess I have
then.
to follow your instructions. Goodall, I read the Goodall book about the monkeys, but we
About-
talked about that at some
Yes,
point.
we already did. So I will ask you whether you have discovered any new sites in Rome that are unfamiliar, that you found to be unfamiliar to you. Is that possible?
What have I seen recently? Found an amazing corner when I went to bring Richard Walker home, or was it Angelo? Angelo is the Italian friend who also wants to buy a video camera, and who I will offer the use of this to. I think he probably wants to get the fancier one, but on the other hand, I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna call
Okay.
him as soon as I get back to Rome, tell him I did this thing. Anyway, he lives in the same area as where Richard does it. But in order to drive there, I drove down this road, which is like a country road in the middle of Rome, which you sometimes encounter these things.
Really?
Yeah, and things that you've never seen before, with a wall on one side and trees on the other side, just in the middle
Sounds
of...
like a country road, as you
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. That is sometimes.
Strange. And you have never seen it before.
Right,
Not new, on the contrary, sort of old.
right.
Huh. What about that news, when Danny, I think, was there last, somebody was there about a year ago, there was a new discovery of some kind unearthed.
Oh, they're always unearthing new things. Do you remember what?
No, that's why I'm asking you.
I don't know. They dug up this amazing thing near Naples, which was, they found a sort of a hotel.
You'll have to talk a little louder.
They found a hotel near Naples when they were making, they were doing some repairs on the freeway.
An antique hotel?
Yeah.
An old Roman hotel?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
did they know it was a hotel?
I don't know. It was all this. I mean, there were guest rooms. There was all. I mean, whatever the experts know how to figure that sort of thing out. But it was more of an inn. I don't think that there was much place for people to sleep. There were a couple of rooms for people to sleep, and there were several dining rooms. It was a restaurant hotel, an inn
An inn?
with very beautiful frescoes.
And with frescoes in it?
Yeah,
Particular kinds of frescoes?
I haven't seen.
I
I don't
mean-
think I saw a picture. Some dancing fawn or something like that. I saw a picture of, but.
My question is aimed at what kind of customers they expected to get suiting the frescoes to the customers.
I don't know.
No, okay.
Okay, can we turn this off? I think I've had enough of
You've had
interviewed
enough?
about Rome.
You don't like my...
No, it's not like, this isn't like a normal conversation. And
No.
and I don't think I have anything to say about the subject.
No, I was set off by the contrast. You said, you sort of mentioned this facelift business as though it was something that you just did because somebody talked you into it and it made no difference. Were you disappointed in that? The reason it struck me is that you said also when we were looking at this becoming an elder citizen and these things, you're saying how you, like everybody at that age, at the age of 60, 65, rebelled against the idea of becoming an elder person.
Yes, true enough.
And so that the facelift would be part of that.
I think it was good. I just don't remember it, but I certainly remember being pleased by it, except with the sort of folds that he left at the back of my neck. Those have disappeared. I don't know that they've completely disappeared yet, but it was okay. It's not something I have thought about for a long, long time.
How old was your mother when she died?
92. She was she thought she had TB, at one time, so that she was in a sanitarium for 6 or 8 months.
I mean, as a young woman.
Well, having born 5 children, and I think that I think that Helen was old enough to take care of us all, or else we were farmed. Maybe that was one of the times we went to Montreal. I think that Cyril and I went there a couple of times. The Montreal cousins weren't all that loving to any, I mean, not that we were mistreated in any way at all, and I don't even remember being restricted, really, being treated at all badly. And in fact, I admired one of my cousins tremendously, Sonia, because she painted. It wasn't until much later, I mean, they were good oil paintings. It wasn't until a lot later that I realized they were all copies.
You never told me about this, that you were farmed out to your cousins, to your uncle and uncle.
My uncle and aunt Ida, uncle, forgotten his name. They were sort of wealthy. I don't know exactly why or how. Sort of at the upper end of middle class. I mean, middle class, but a comfortable middle class, I guess, judging from their furniture and their living room and the oil paintings. And I think Sonia had some pretensions, at least a little bit, to being different and an artist. Helen would know much more about it. my
Were,
sister.
but were you there with her, or you were there just
Oh,
with...
no, just with
Cyril?
Cyril. I don't remember my other sisters being there, but they might have. Maybe Dorothy was there with us.
How old were you?
I was maybe 5 or 6. It must have been, yes, if I was 5, because I was about 7 when I went there pre-Detroit with Cyril. For some reason, maybe this coincided with my mother's hospitalization. It wasn't hospitalization, it was sanatorium. I don't know if she ever really had TB, but from then on she was a health fiend. She would buy health foods for herself to be very, I think she felt we were all healthy. We didn't need these health foods. Bernard McFadden, have you ever heard of him? He was sort of, the hero. Maybe he had ads where he showed a weakling, a man who was a weakling, and then if they followed Bernard McFadden's rules, he became very strong. And he was a weakling on the beach, and the strong guys threw sand at him, and then he became a strong guy.
I thought that was what was the, not Ralph Nitty, was a...
Yeah, that's Bernard McFadden.
I thought that was a health club where you would lift weights and become a strong,
Oh,
the
and
80-pound
Helen.
weakling who would become...
Well, maybe that it was mixed up with that too. I just remember that name very clearly. Bernard.
Huh.
I think it was Bernard, not Bernard.
Anyway, why do you think why do you doubt the diagnosis of tuberculosis?
Maybe I couldn't have made that up myself. Perhaps she was examined by a doctor after she returned. I'm just making this up, but I imagine that was the why. And the doctor found no traces of TB. In those days, when people had TB, they were sent away to sanitariums. Like the Magic Mountain.
Yeah. No, so I was wondering what the reason, whether it was something having to do with your relationship with your mother, or whether it was because of the stigma attached to TB, or what, that you...
I don't think there was a stigma. At least I didn't feel there was a stigma. My mother, though I came to somewhat scorn her when I was an adult, and I realized that she was a limited person, she was a wonderful mother. I told you what my first memory of her was.
I'll walk over here.
You still have this on? And you're walking across my image?
Oh, well, we can cut it out.
Did I ever tell you how my mother took care of me? I remember me, probably all the other children too. She had a special smock that she hung by the door of our room, and that she put on when we were sick and took off, to protect us from germs.
Ah.
And then she was the one who comforted me when I had a migraine. I would wake up crying.
Oy, they're coming
And
back. They're coming back.
Oy,
Oh, maybe
okay.
they'll go out again because it's nice weather. I was wondering, now, I was going back to you knew your mother when she was the age that you are now.
No, younger, because by my age, she was in an, quotes, old folks home, as they called it then.
Yeah.
Because she died at 92, and I
Right.
think she entered, she thought of this herself at about 80. She asked Helen to find a place for her. I guess maybe she felt she was a burden. She would live alternately with me. This aside, so I will
Work it out later. Hi.
We got a page up.
Oh, they got it early today.
It's the man who got that artificial heart. It's nice out.
Is it?
Yeah.
I can see it at least one more time. Otherwise, I'll have to stop it. Do you want to go back to the ocean today? Well, it's
Yeah,
so beautiful.
yeah. we can
No,
do
that's
that.
fine with me.
It's fine with me to do that every day. For me, a lot of Mount Desert is too tame. I find it,
But we
it's not
must-
interesting to me for that.
Yeah, but we must go to the azalea garden again.
Yep. Oh, yeah, no, that's not tame. That's something else.
You remember that we went on that mile-long walk to the
The
where I
rocks.
fell on
Yeah.
the rocks. Yes. Of course, that wasn't so crashy. That was more like a bay, I think, than true enough. No, it's down along there that the real ocean. Once I took Selma down to a little walk. Did I ever take you there? To a cliff right above the crashing waves. There was a place to sit, sort of a picnic, informal picnic grounds. Selma was really too ill. She was having, I think she had started her cancer. It was in her back first, and she didn't know it. But she gamely, I didn't think there was anything to it to walk across the rocks to get there. But now when I think of my trying to navigate it, well, because I would surely take you there. It was so beautiful.
But you have to go across rocks to get there?
You have to go across flat rocks. You also have to find it. It was like it was outside of Northeast Harbor, and I believe there was a road leading into it, but I never have, while you were visiting me, I never tried to find it when you were here with me. Anyway.
No, I was asking about your mother when she was your age, how you felt about people that age and what they...
Well, I thought it was very proper for her to be in an old folks home, and it was in Detroit. I remember visiting her with a broken leg, and I thought it was very dramatic that her daughter in a cast, a hip cast, was hobbling down to see her. That's once a year that I went to see my mother. I had so much faith in my mother that I didn't think of her as wanting to see me. Of course, my sisters were there. Dorothy was there, and my sister-in-law, my brother and my sister-in-law were there in Detroit. I think Helen by that time had gone to not Spring Lake. She and Sigmund bought a trailer park at one time. I told you about it. You visited there, as a matter of fact. And Richard took care of you, and he was a terrible babysitter, as I remember.
I'll tell you what he did.
What?
He taught me 52 pickup.
What is 52 pickup? Sticks, right?
No, 52 pickup is you take a deck of cards and you ask a little kid, do you know how to play 52 pickup? And they say, no, tell me. And you take the deck of cards and you throw them on the floor and you say, now you have to pick them up.
That's 52 pickup. I don't think you ever told me that, but he was a tormentor as a babysitter. Now he is so kind and good to family. Couldn't be better. Oh. And were you with us when we visited him at camp? I think I even have some pictures.
So, because I think there are photographs of it that
Yeah.
document it. I don't remember it.
Right, and Terry too. They were really, Helen was so passionate about Sigmund that I think she sort of neglected Terry and Richard.
Huh.
Richard was 3 years old when when his grandfather died. My father died, and I remember his sitting on a piano bench in the living room. I guess we were probably sitting shiva. And wondering if this little 3-year-old would remember it. I never asked him since.
If you were sitting Shiva and did things like that, your brother must have been bar mitzvahed.
I doubt it because At least I never remember my brother learning Hebrew or I don't remember a bar mitzvah. Well, however,
He was.
he
You
was
would, you
about
would have
10
been. You would have been 4 years old or 3 years
That's
old.
right, that's right.
Yeah.
So my memory is no doubt selective. Did I ever tell you I must have told you my very first memory. It's so nice and says so much about my mother that I must have been a year and a half or 2 years. My mother was taking down the laundry from the clothesline on a long, long porch that we had. There was a basket for her to put the freshly, things. And I climbed into it and lay down, and I remember how lovely that was, and that my mother didn't scold or anything. I remember her sort of laughing. Now wasn't that nice? A nice memory to have of one's mother, and I must have been very young, 18 months, 2 years, to climb into a clothes basket. I didn't just step into it. Oh, that's nice. I can't believe that 5 minutes have passed. And how long?
What?
How long is that?
How long has that thing been running?
Yeah.
I don't know. Why, you want to take a break?
No, it's perfectly all right with me. But I had the thought that you had only 5 minutes of time or something like that.
Ah, no. No, there's plenty. There's plenty of time. I mean, the whole tape is an hour long. I don't know how much I have on it already.
Oh, but you already have some.
Right.
Well,
but
you're using that tape over and over.
No, the tape is an hour long.
Uh-huh.
We're probably getting toward the end of it now.
And you're going to be able to play it on
And then I
this?
have a second tape.
A second
record
cassette,
all
you
this.
mean?
What happens if there are two figures? What does that look like?
Well, how can
Will I be on this way? Wait a minute.
Well, you have to be quite close to me, I think. I know you had me centered nicely on that.
I just lost it.
Oh, what a good idea, yes. I can
Oh, we
sort
have
of
to
see
be so
it.
close to each other that...
Okay.
No, wait a minute.
See, I'm sort of a little bit to one side, so if you come
Alright, let
close
me-
to me,
Turn this off a minute.
you could take, it seems very well lighted. Welcome.
Hi. No, what I was curious about it actually never occurred to me before, was that you knew your mother as a person of your age now.
Yes, but
I'm wondering if you had a different perspective on
Not-
aging from having hit it, or on what she was like at
not
85.
at all. The
or-
odd thing is I never remember my mother changing. She was always my mother.
Ah,
So I never thought of her, I never thought of her appearance. I didn't think to myself, oh, this is an old lady. In fact, remember when I got sort of annoyed with her for slowly returning, at the age of about 60, I guess, a grocery shopping cart to the sidewalk, and you said to me, wait until you're, maybe you said 60 years old, or maybe you said, wait until you're her age.
no, but I wasn't, about appearance, and physical
No,
incapacity, yeah.
yeah, I might have, now she was already living in that retirement place. It never occurred to me how adaptive she was to live. It was 2 in a room.
Really?
Yes,
Didn't remember that. I went to see her at least once there.
you do remember that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you never, well, yeah. No, there were 2 in the room. It never, and she had a telephone, so I talked to her every once in a while. It never occurred to me to wonder how she felt that she's an old lady, so what does she care whether she has 2 in her room? I'd probably some thought like that.
Just occurred to me, you could tell me about what your mother was like at my age.
At your age. That's right. She started having children at age about 30, just as I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, by the time she was 50, she already had one grown child, almost grown, Helen. And then came Robert, Bob, my brother, and then came,
So when she was 53, you were, how old was she when you were born?
how old was she?
Started having children when she was 30, so she had you when she was 40? You said
It could
Helen
be.
is 10 years older than you?
Yeah, sure. She and Cyril.
So you were 13. What was your mother like when you were 13?
What was she like?
What was your relationship with her?
My relationship with her was a teenager's relationship. I thought she was very old-fashioned. Well, of course, at that age, I thought my father, who was an anarchist, and all such people. Now, at age 12, I remember having a little argument with him at the dinner table and actually saying, "You want life handed to you on a golden platter." I remember saying that. And then about a year later, I joined the young people's group of the Workman's Circle, which was a sort of a socialist thing. They had an anarchist branch
Mm-hmm.
in which he belonged to. And my social attitudes changed completely. I became not a communist, goodness. Well, I didn't know the difference. Well, I must have known the difference because I remember my father saying that he thought the Reichstag had been put on, remember the starting by the communists. He said he thinks it was a communist idea to do such extreme things that people would turn against the Nazis. Now, he was talking as an anarchist, but it may have been possible, I don't know. But of course, he didn't like communists any more than other people did. It wasn't as rabid then as it is now. I remember his thinking the communists were trying to provoke the Nazis and would show them up so that the German people would reject them. Yeah, so that didn't turn out to be true exactly. He died in 1946, about not too long before I met your father. Maybe it was 1948 then, because your father and I were married later in the year that we met. I told you about that, right?
So I was just thinking for the first time of your mother when she was my
When she was
age,
yours,
going back
I'm
several
far afield from
generations.
that. No, I never thought of her as being only 53. At that time, 53 was ancient, was past middle age. And I thought of her as being old-fashioned. For instance, I moved away from home, because of being egged on by some friends. At about the age of 21, I moved into a room of my own. It was a terrible blow to my mother. And even my father, who didn't usually lecture or anything, said, "Can't you come back? You see how terrible she feels. She feels as a shanda to the neighbors." I told you about that. Did I ever come back home? I don't think so. I think I was in graduate school by then, and right after that, I went to New York. And then I told you about how jealous I was because my mother paid me no attention when I came back on a vacation. It happened that Dorothy had Judy that summer that I came back on vacation. And my mother was very absorbed with being with Judy and the baby. And instead of being delighted, that this new arrival in the family, I was jealous and hurt because my mother wasn't there for me. So I guess I really loved my mother a lot, or I was very attached to her anyway. Same thing.
That was when you came back from graduate school in New York?
No, I went to graduate school in Detroit. Came back from my first job at Community Service Society, where I met Tommy. Community Service Society had...
You met Tommy Walker?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Did our friendship go back that far?
No, I didn't know that.
1946, 47, something like that. And that was a very daring thing. They hired a black social worker. And I believe she was seeing some white families. Ooh.
What did you think of that interviewer in the movie?
The interviewer.
There was the black interviewer.
The black interviewer. I thought she did pretty good.
I thought she was terrific.
Yeah.
Totally
Yeah,
right on for a very
Yeah.
competent reviewer.
Yeah. It didn't seem to matter at all whether she was black or not.
No, it just reminded me.
It wasn't, it didn't seem to me a deliberate choice that there had to be a black in the movie, in the film. Beautiful woman. In fact, I thought that she was going to enact one of this crazy ideas about seduce and destroy.
Yeah, there was a lot of ambiguity there.
Yeah, right.
It was just beautifully done how she was maintaining her control always and playing her cards close to her chest.
Yeah, she was being a good interviewer. She had read up on his background, obviously, and she found this thing that just threw him for a loop. Now, the puzzle to me is why he should have such enmity toward women.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Well, it's just transferred from his enmity toward men. Or else he's enacting his father, he's being his father.
But his father was always, I think either it was that or it was obvious that he had been having affairs while his wife was dying of cancer.
Well, he had left the family while his wife was dying.
Yeah, he'd left the whole family. And Linda was an example of the kind of woman that he was attracted to. Now, see, there was a false note. She said she didn't want any of his money when he died. She absolutely refused because now she loved him. So why didn't the lawyer say, okay, you can't get out of taking the money, give it to a charity immediately?
Yeah, it was everything about her situation and her character and her acting were all off.
But the lawyer was off too.
Right.
He was
Everything
giving
that
her-
surrounded her little story, it's as though it was an afterthought or something. He didn't work it out very well.
I don't know how capable he was of working out anything except the father-son relationship. And that...
I thought the movie was marvelously worked out for all these complex relationships.
I said that's why I kept saying, I think there was an editor who made all this clear.
What makes you think that? On what evidence?
Because it was too coherent. And he was an incoherent person. I only realized it was coherent when I saw the second part of it. At the first part I didn't understand at all because
No, I think that you're confusing arrogance with incoherence. And he's certainly an arrogant person, but I think that he's very confident.
I
He
didn't
knew
get that.
exactly what he was doing.
I don't think so. I think he knew what he was doing in little bits of it. You know, when you saw him directing somebody and making her doing it over and over and over. But even then, you didn't know whether it was arrogance or competence. Well,
Ugh, basta.
let's see what we got there.
No.
Push your chair closer to him.
We can go sit.
And I will interview
It might be
you.
easy if
We'll
we
go
can,
sit.
Well, ask them